Hey guys, so real quick, I want to go over how to do the lighting in Blender Render as opposed to Cycles in case you are using that engine instead. So this is the same scene that we had in the Cycles version of this tutorial. We have, of course, this lamp that we added earlier. We have a sun lamp in the environment as well. The settings and everything are very similar. You can just sort of add the energy level for the lamp to make it brighter or darker. This is fine at 1, I believe. And then you can also add a ray shadow option. Now this is something that's very important in the sun. Here, if we go ahead and click the sun here, there is, if you look down here, the ray shadow option. Now if you don't have this turned on, if you have no shadow turned on, then you will have no shadows being cast in your scene. So we're going to go and hit a render option right here, see exactly how this looks. I think we do have ambient occlusion turned on all the way right now, pretty much at 0.5. Yeah, exactly. So it's a little bit too bright right now, but on top of that, there's barely any shadows. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn that off real quick and re-render that. You'll see that there is going to be parts that are dark, but there's not going to be any shadows that are cast from any objects. So for example, in the Cycles version, we had this sort of diagonal line where the blocks would cast shadows on the blocks next to it, because that's how light works. This tree has no shadow, this cake has no shadow, the person has no shadow. So we're going to go ahead and add the shadow real quick by going in the lamp options. Here we go. And then scrolling all the way down to the ray shadow. I'm going to go ahead and close the sky and atmosphere. We'll get to that in a little bit. But the ray shadow option here, turn that on. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit F11 and then hit J. We can go to slot 2, as you guys know, to compare the two versions. And I'm going to go ahead and render that out. And as you can see, there's actually shadows underneath the trees. You see, so there's actually shade. The character is casting a shadow now as well, as you can see there. The cake is casting a shadow. The sword is casting a shadow. All of this stuff is actually working, which is fantastic. I highly recommend turning on ray shadow for your sun lamp. But of course, the shadows are a little bit too dark, so how do we fix that? You may have guessed it already. Just go to the world settings and turn on ambient occlusion again, and we should have a pretty decent amount of lighting filling out those shadows. As you can see here, much more realistic, much nicer, much cleaner, a little bit brighter. This is already a pretty good render setting to go for lighting, in my opinion. Now, we do need to add the skybox, so we're going to go ahead and do that as well. As you know, we did it in the world settings last time in Cycles, but we can go ahead and go to the world settings and find out that there is no real texture option for the world in the world settings. Instead, you have to go to the texture tab, and you should see this world option in the texture tab. You might see these other ones. If you have a material selected or an object selected, you'll have a pink globe here instead of a light. But you can just click the world at any time, and that'll give you the texture for the world settings. So I'm going to go ahead and click that world icon here in the texture tab and click the new texture option. It should still be an image or movie. That's good. And then I'm going to go ahead and go to the drop down here to choose my Cloudy 16 JPEG, find the right file. And once we have that, we want to scroll all the way down to mapping, and instead of view, we want to change this to equirectangular, which basically means panoramic. If you guys have ever taken a panoramic photo, that's exactly what it's sort of reading it as now, which is what we want. I'm also going to go ahead and check horizon and uncheck blend, and then we're going to go ahead and go into the viewport and hit N to go see the world background option. Turn that on, and as you can see here, it doesn't exactly work. It sort of just stays still, and I can't. It's not a sky, it's more of a background, right? That's not what we want at all. We want the sky to feel like a sky box or a sky dome. So we're missing something. There's one more setting we have to turn on, and it's in the world settings. And instead of all this stuff being unchecked, go ahead and check real sky. Now you should be able to look at it like a real sky. As you can see here, the sky is actually mapped onto the sky, and you can see it and use it as a sky, and it works great. You can turn on environment lighting if you want to, and then turn on sky texture. That will sort of do the same thing as what it does in Cycles, where it sort of actually illuminates the environment a little bit based on the texture, which is nice. If you render this out, you can actually see what that looks like. It will be slightly lighter, nothing too crazy. I think Cycles is a little bit better at applying that environment light, but it does look pretty nice. So it adds a little bit of that blue hue to it, which is a little bit more realistic, because in real life, things do have a sort of blue hue because of the blue sky. So anyway, that's how you add your skybox. You already know how to add your sun lamp and everything like that. That's it for lighting in Blender Render, and hopefully you guys can tinker around with the settings and get something that looks really nice. And good luck. Hope you guys learned something.